wasn't pretty, but people noticed me. While on the Oregon Trail, a Plains Indian chief tried to buy me from the wagon train. Well, barter, actually. He offered a band of horses.
How's your walk been today? Nice so far? It's still early, isn't it? Well, I thank you all for coming by to see off Mrs. Clemens and myself. I can't believe that it's time for us to leave this city. Oh, I recently got a letter from Mark, as he prefers to be called now. He's recently contracted by the Sacramento Daily Union to tour the Sandwich Islands and write about all that he sees. Oh, his enthusiasm reminded me of when we first came west 5 years ago. Oh, at the time, Nevada had a history of being ungoverned.
So I'd like you all to meet the Colossus of the Comstock, Bill Stewart. Bill, maybe you could share a story with us.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Welcome to my 1860 home. I had many homes across the West, and this is the one that I occupied while doing mining litigation on the Comstock. It's good to see all of you here today. Well, this fellow right here, you know, he reminds me of a visitor I had back in Washington in 1867 when I had an apartment there. I had gone east as senator during my first stint as senator in the East. It was late one night, and I heard a knock on the door of my apartment. I opened the door, and there was this disreputable looking character in an old slouch hat with a cigar and a sheep.
Nice to see the ladies out. Yes.
Constant cold temperatures the true lager requires. The pure, clear water used in the brewing process came from the Kings Canyon Creek west of town, that direction.
I'm a reporter from these parts. I lived in this area in the late 1800s. I worked for pretty much every newspaper and rag around here. Gold Hill, Virginia City, Carson City, Austin, you name the place, I probably worked there. I was one time drinking companion for Mark Twain when he was in the area as a reporter. He used to refer to me as a murderer and a bully, but he was referring to my way with words, not necessarily my way with people. I'd like to tell you a story about the great political disaster of 1885. And you may be asking yourself, great political disaster of 1885, what was that? Well, around 1885, there was a group here in Carson City named the WCTU, which was short for the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And they got a bee in their bonnet and decided that Nevada was going to be a dry state. Well, they shopped that idea around to all the legislaturists, and the legislature wouldn't have anything of it. They said that Nevada will never be a dry state. Well, they decided if they couldn't have a dry state, then they would go about halfway and make it harder for people to get drunk and be rowdy. And they decided to introduce a bill that made it illegal for one person to buy another person a drink in a bar. So you could go in and buy yourself a drink, but you couldn't buy your friends a drink, and you couldn't buy a round of drinks. And somehow that was going to cut down on the rowdiness in the bars. Well, they shopped that bill around as well, and no one would touch it with a 10-foot pole except for one wiseacre from Elko County by the name of Bill Miller. And Mr. Miller decided, hey, I'll introduce that bill as a lark, and he introduced the bill, and the rest of the legislature, they thought it was the funniest thing they ever seen, that he was actually introducing this ridiculous bill, so they passed it. They thought, gosh, that's a gas.
Listed as having the second highest population growth in the nation. The legislative quarters in the Capitol building were no longer adequate. To meet the challenge, the 1967 legislature appointed $3.5 million for our new legislative building.
Nevada gunfight. Yeah! Our story today is loosely based on two actual events that took place in northern Nevada. We have used real Nevadans and where possible real locations. This is early Nevada history. We take you back now to 1862 here at Carson City. Far from the cannon fire and charging masses of blue and gray soldiers, but the same war is being fought here, in the far reaches of the west and as passionately as it is in the east. Desperate men with differing viewpoints have settled into a dark conflict of espionage and guerrilla warfare. On the corner of what is now Carson and 5th Streets, in the bar of the Frisbee restaurant.
What do you think, boys?